Good morning. Hopefully the third time is a charm. This is 3 times I've tried to do this video this morning. So we are going to conquer the enemy for sure. Good morning and welcome to Discovering the Jewish Messiah. I am excited to share with you some teachings this morning. And it's going to be a very basic kind of a foundation for where we're going to go from here. And I wanted to take just a little while because I feel it is so important for you to understand why I approach my teachings the way that I do. The scriptures were written for us, but not to us. And so many times because of that, we lose sight. We do not grasp all the treasure that's in the scriptures for us because we are not of that culture. And so we miss a lot of the meaning that is there. It's not that it's hidden and God doesn't want us to see it. It's not that it's too hard. But it is simply one of those things that unless you are seeking, you have a heart that wants more, that you yearn for more from the Father, that you know that just a casual reading of the scriptures for 30 minutes in the morning is not enough, that your spirit is hungering and thirsting after that righteousness. But when we sit on a church pew and warm a pew every Sunday, that can be good as long as you're not substituting the Sabbath for Sunday. But we leave and we're still hungry. And oftentimes it's because the messages that are being preached are so elementary and that we've grown, and so we know that there's more there, but we don't know how to find it. And that's not saying anything derogatory against our teachers and our shepherds. We are so far removed from the beginning of the ecclesia, the called out, the congregation of God's people, that we've been watered down, we've been infiltrated with paganism. We're dirty. I mean, let's be honest, God's people are filthy with transgressions, with sin, with paganism, and we bring it into the church, into the congregation of God's people. Because there's not enough understanding of the Hebrew mindset, especially when it comes to covenant. We must understand covenant to really experience and understand the depth of God's love, our Elohim's love for us. Because covenant is what binds us together to God. It's what brings us face to face with Him. Okay? We are lacking that because we are depending on a preacher to tell us what the word says, and we're not getting in there ourselves and digging it out. Gold, if you remember the gold rushes, was not easily found in most cases. They had to go into the mountain, very dangerous, dark, horrible circumstances, and pound on rock to dig out, to find that vein of gold that they knew was there. And they were so passionate about it, and they kept digging and they kept digging and they kept searching and they kept going for days and days and weeks and months and sometimes years of just horrible living, painstaking labor, to find that one vein that was going to change their lives, that was going to bring them, if you will, salvation from the poverty that they were in. This hope of a better life drove them to continue to pound on that mountain until they found what they were looking for. Some of them gave up, some of them didn't. But the point being that things of value are worth seeking out. How much more valuable is a relationship with the creator of the universe? How much more valuable than gold is that? To obtain the wisdom that allows us to take the knowledge that we have and work out our salvation. You know, knowledge is worthless without wisdom. I can have all the knowledge in the world, but if I do not have wisdom that teaches me how to apply that knowledge correctly, then it's useless. And if I have all the knowledge and have no love for God, it's useless. Everything hinges on our heart, our love, our desire to know our Creator in every way that we possibly can. That we are so hungry for Him, that we will open up our Bibles, that we will buy those research books, that we will Google words if we don't know what they mean, that we will find a mentor, a teacher that can guide us, okay, and teach us how to pull out that information. You know, there were a lot of people that went to mine for gold that had no clue what they were doing. They would hire somebody to teach them what they needed to know so that they would know how to extract the gold that was there. Much the same way, we have teachers that can guide us and teach us how to pull out the nuggets of gold that are in the scriptures that we've never seen before because we've just not been taught how to do that. And in today's fast-paced society, it's not a priority. It's just not. We have come, and you know, God gave a warning. Moses gave a warning to the people before they crossed over into the promised land. And he said, you know, I put before you today blessings and curses. If you keep my statutes, God said, if you keep my law and my covenant, if you obey and keep my Sabbaths, he even specifies his Sabbaths, and my feast and my holy days, you will be blessed. But if you don't, this is what's going to happen to you. And so the importance of us clinging to God and seeking him on his terms, because we are in his kingdom, we are his people, he is our king, so we don't have a say in how we worship. But in today's he said, don't get over in these lands and basically get content. You have enough food, you have shelter, and houses that you didn't build, vineyards you didn't plant, waters that run rampant, the land with milk and honey. Beware lest you be content and think of yourselves as gods and that you don't need God. And that's what's happened in this country. We have pushed God out because we think we are so smart and we think we are so knowledgeable that we have everything that we need. Why do I need to open up the Bible? I'll just sit on a pew. Better not be more than 40 minutes. Lord forbid that the pastor or the teacher or the rabbi makes us think and dig things out and worship before our King. Because we've got to get to the lake or to a ball game or to a ball practice. And people would stand all day to hear the law of our Elohim read. Men, women, and children would gather and worship as the name of Elohim was pronounced in the scriptures. They would bow. They reverenced the scriptures. It was priority in their lives. They needed God every day for every morsel of food, for their provisions. And we think we don't. we live in such a rich society that we're spoiled, rotten brats that do not have a clue about covenant and what it takes to be in the kingdom, serving a king, because we are we claim we're Americans, we're free, we have freedom of speech, we have free. Everything's supposed to be given to us because we're Americans. We shouldn't have to do anything. We want our freedom. We have liberty. And it has polluted our thinking when it comes to honoring. Again, that's a term that we don't use here in the United States, in the Western mind. In that culture, honor was crucial. Honor and shame was the system. And so they honored their kings by even giving their lives, even if they didn't agree with them. And today, we don't have that concept here. And so we miss what the scriptures are saying to us, because we want to look at the scriptures and think that because YAHSHUA came, I don't have to do anything but believe. I have no respect for God's law because we're taught in the churches it's done away with and abolished, and we live by grace. We're saved by grace. A whole nother subject. And so there is no reverence for the law of God. There is not 1 ounce of fear, a righteous fear of our Elohim, because we have liberty. We're so free in America. Don't judge me. Don't tell me what to do. Don't teach me how to dress modestly. Don't tell me my daughters don't need to be wearing hoochie shorts and shaking their bums in front of everybody and doing all of this worldly stuff that doesn't profess godliness. Don't tell me you're judging me. No, I'm trying to reach out and share with you who we are in Messiah. We're to be set apart and different. We're holy by the blood of YAHSHUA, our King. We're supposed to be lights. We're supposed to be his image. And the commandments and the statutes and the laws of God are what teach us how to do that. It doesn't put bondage on us. It frees us from the penalty of death. Because now we understand what sin is. Now we understand what God requires for us to be in his presence, to be face to face with him. That is why the scriptures over and over, especially in the Brit Hadashah, or what we know as the New Testament, over and over and over, he says, if you love me, keep my commandments. They weren't done away with. Paul said, do we abolish the law by faith? Absolutely not. We uphold the law because the law is righteous and just. And so the culture of that time was honor and shame. They knew how to honor their king, and so as not to bring shame and reproach on the kingdom, on their Messiah, whom they reflected. We are ambassadors. We are supposed to be walking and talking little messiahs, if you will, not giving ourselves the title of God. That's not what I mean by that. But they should see YAHSHUA in us daily. And how we learn to do that and learn the character of God and know how to approach him and how to be like him is to go back to the very beginning and see how he defines the terms that they use in the Brit Hadashah. Because we miss it so much of the time. Covenant, we think, oh, covenant, yeah, covenant. And we have no clue what covenant is and what it means to the people of God and what it means that our Savior walked with Abraham. If you'll remember, when he made the covenant with Abraham, he caused a deep sleep to fall on Abraham, and he walked through the pieces for him because he knew that human beings, damaged by sin, fallen man, would not and could not keep covenant. And so he walked through those pieces for us so that he keeps our end of it and his. Covenant is covenant is eternal. Covenants build on each other. They do not abolish one another. So when Messiah came, in Matthew, we see him teaching, and one of the first things we hear him say is, I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill. And we talked about that yesterday. So he came to teach us because he loves his children. He loves his people. And he wants us to have that covenant relationship with him. And in order to be in covenant, his kingdom has rules and regulations and standards and protocols. Just as if you were going to go see the Queen of England, you would be tutored in correct protocol on how that you would come into the presence of the Queen of England. It is no different, and that is why we miss it, because as Americans, we don't have that concept of kingship and protocols for royalty. He is royalty. Have you thought about it that way? That our God, our King, our Messiah, our Elohim, he is our King. And what king and what kingdom does not have laws and restrictions and protocols? And where do we learn what those are? We go all the way back to the beginning, and we read about the character of Yahweh. We read about what makes him happy, what pleases him, what he commands. What are his protocols to approach him? How do we enter his courts with singing and praise? How do we worship from the Spirit? How do we do these things? And we find all of that in the Torah and in the Tanakh, the prophecies and the teachings that are there. What we learn as we go, that yes, God had a system in place that pointed to the time that Messiah would come, when these things, certain aspects of how we approached God would change because of the blood that would be shed by our Messiah. But the protocols and the commandments on how to serve him, when to meet with him, what to look for, how we know it's him, how we know when he's coming, how we understand his word, how we communicate with him, how the Holy Spirit works in our lives and in us as believers, who we even are. All of that is in the front of the book. And if we understand the terms, the pictures, and the knowledge of covenant in the front of the book, when we get to the back of the book, then as we read through the New Testament and we read the writings of Paul especially, then we're going to be able to understand and grasp the meaning of what it was at the time it was written, not through the lens of our Greek mindset of what we think it means, because it doesn't matter 1 ounce what we think or what makes us feel good. It's not about us. I've got a newsflash. It's not about me. It's not about you. It is about understanding what the King requires for us to be in his court, to bring our praise to him. Yes, YAHSHUA made the way and made us righteous by his blood. Part of the covenant is exchanging garments. And we're going to talk more later. I'm running out of time this morning, but he gave us his garment so that when the Father looks down, he doesn't see our filthy rags of sin and death. He sees righteousness. And that is true. But just because we have that garment doesn't mean we do not have to walk in the commandments of the kingdom. And we do it now because we love him and we realize where we would have been without his blood, that death would still be reigning in our lives. There would be no resurrection without him. And so now, as a rejoicing person, a child of him, a grafted in, adopted child of the King with double portion blessings, who cannot, do you know that in Hebrew Jewish society, that you could disown your birth child, but you cannot disown your adopted child? We have a double portion blessing as adopted children. We have a double portion of the covenant blessings given through the covenants down through the ages. Through Abraham, all the way through YAHSHUA. We have all of these blessings in double proportions because we're adopted into the kingdom. And so when we begin to understand what that means from that Hebrew mindset, from that culture, from that time period of when it was written and to the people it was written to, then we begin to grasp just how precious that word covenant is, and just how important it is to understand the rules of the kingdom. Because I don't want to be in the kingdom and not be blessed, because I don't know what to do in the kingdom. I don't know what day to worship on. I don't know what days that the King says, I'm coming and I'm going to meet with you on these appointed times. And so I miss it. I don't do it. The church hasn't been doing the feasts for 2,000 years. They don't think they're important. He said to do this forever. It's part of his covenant that is eternal. It has nothing to do with salvation. It has to do with kingdom, with regulations, with protocols, with commandments that were put in place to teach us how to love him correctly. That is why, again, and I keep saying this, but it is so important for us to grasp. That is why he says so many times, and the apostles carry it out, if you love me, you're going to keep my commandments and my statutes, because they're holy and just and good. They're not a burden like the way that the council and the rulers, the Sadducees, had and the sages had put such a burden on the people. He said, no, that's not my word. That's not my commandments. This is what I said, and this, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So when we begin to grow and understand the difference in keeping commandments for salvation and keeping his commandments to be in the kingdom, and because we love and honor our King, because when we don't, we bring shame to the kingdom of Messiah. And that culture of honor and shame is something that is foreign to us. We operate on guilt and innocence. That's our society. But in that culture, it was honor and shame. And so when I dishonored my King in that culture, I would rather die than to bring shame on the kingdom, on the King or my family. And so it's a whole different mindset. I hope this has helped you understand and grasp just a little bit more depth of why it is so important to understand these things in the front of the book. It's so crucial because it opens up so many more doors and so much more understanding when we begin to walk out our faith and to be that light to the nations, to the people that are lost out there, that don't know who they are. And we're going to talk about that at another time as well, who you are in Messiah. So I hope this has been a blessing. Thank you for joining me. I will be posting this on the YouTube later today. Please go to my YouTube channel. It's under Rochelle James. You'll see the picture of Messiah. And just like the page, subscribe, comment. The comments are what makes the videos be seen more. And help me as I do my very best to reach God's children with this message. Thank you so much. I hope you have a blessed day. Shalom.